There aren't any signs out here yet, but there will be soon. Former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, perhaps running for president as a Republican, has rented space in this office building for a possible campaign headquarters. This sets the stage for a fascinating political showdown. Governor Chafee, of course, was elected as an independent, and it will be interesting to see how many Democrats, let alone Republicans, line up behind his sales tax plan. At the State House in Providence, Mark Curtis, ABC 6 News. One thing to keep in mind, New Hampshire is historically a swing state. For example, George W. Bush won it in 2000, then lost it in 2004. New Hampshire Republicans are optimistic they can take the state back in 2012. People say pennies aren't worth much nowadays, but they can help us illustrate Rhode Island's pension problems. Let's assume every year taxpayers put in 2 pennies in contributions and retirees take out 4 pennies in benefits. Another year, 2 cents in and 4 cents out. Sooner or later, the math won't add up and the fund will be empty.
ABC 6 chief political reporter Mark Curtis spent the day in Portsmouth, New Hampshire with Donald Trump. And he's back now with the story. Mark.
John and Allison, good afternoon. This is an interesting story because Donald Trump was really the one pushing this issue of late. We, of course, don't even know if Mr. Trump will run for president, yet we sure got an indication today of what a face-to-face debate between him and President Obama might look like.
Today, I'm very proud of myself because I've accomplished something that nobody else has been able to accomplish.
And with that, Donald Trump praised the White House for finally releasing the original Hawaiian birth certificate for President Obama. Trump, who came to New Hampshire to discuss a possible Republican bid for the White House, instead wound up in dueling news conferences at the same time as the president.
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
The so-called birther issue has been simmering for years, with critics believing Mr. Obama was actually born in Kenya and was therefore not eligible to be the U.S. president. Trump added fuel to the fire recently and says he still wants the document authenticated.
Now, we have to look at it. We have to see, is it real? Is it proper? What's on it? But I hope it checks out beautifully.
The White House considers the birth certificate controversy closed and says it's time to focus on the sagging economy, high unemployment, and staggering gas prices.
We do not have time for this kind of silliness. We got better stuff to do. I've got better stuff to do. We got big problems to solve.
So it would appear for now that the birther issue is dead. The question now is, will Donald Trump really run for president or won't he? He did not tell us today. So as we say in TV, stay tuned.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, we all went up there, I think, hoping to find out if he was going to run for president. This was really a big surprise that the White House pulled today.
I was going to say, Mark, more than a coincidence, wasn't it? Donald Trump's in New Hampshire, the first primary state, and all of a sudden, after all this time, the president and the White House released the birth certificate.
Pardon the pun, but I think the White House trumped Trump today. They knew he was going to make national headlines by being in New Hampshire, the first primary state. This was his first trip there, and he was testing the waters. All the networks were there, all the regional and local television stations were there, and the White House, I think at the last minute, said, okay, we'll put these two on the national stage and let voters see what they look like side by side. And again, I think, pardon the pun, the White House trumped Trump. We'll see what happens going forward. We'll find out in about a month whether he's really going to run or not.
All right, thank you, Mark.
ABC 6 chief political reporter Mark Curtis recently ventured to the Granite State and has our report.
The flags are flying, the political signs are out, and the potential candidates are already here. New Hampshire's first in the nation presidential primary may be 8 months away, but everyone is gearing up. Henry Ahern is on the Grafton County Republican Committee.
I think the Republicans have a very good chance this time. Certainly feel Obama's vulnerable to being replaced, which would be make a lot of us happy.
With his approval rating around 48% in recent polls, President Obama is not a sure bet for re-election. Among the possible Republican challengers, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Two women are on the potential list as well, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann and former vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin. There aren't any signs out here yet, but there will be soon. Former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, perhaps running for president as a Republican, has rented space in this office building for a possible campaign headquarters. Plymouth is a beautiful, historic New England town. Its economy framed by a rural farming population on one end and a vibrant college campus on the other end. Despite some troubles, President Obama has support here.
As of right now, I would vote for him again because I really think that he can bring change, and he's done things so far that have been good.
I like what he's doing with the economy currently. I like the actions that he's been taking.
So far, it's anybody's race. Many Republicans are uncommitted and want answers on a whole laundry list of issues.
The big thing I hear around up here, and probably myself as well, is the economy. Of course, defense, terrorism.
There is no clear GOP frontrunner, so right now the New Hampshire sky is the limit. In Plymouth, New Hampshire, Mark Curtis, ABC 6 News.
ABC 6 chief political reporter Mark Curtis spent much of Wednesday in New Hampshire following Donald Trump engaging voter reaction.
Donald Trump's dramatic arrival in New Hampshire begs the question, if he runs for president, can he win? Facing a throng of reporters, Trump blamed President Obama for failing to ease high gasoline prices. At that point, it was my turn to shout a question to the potential president.
So what will you do differently? What do you do differently?
What I would do differently is come down really hard on OPEC. If you look at these nations, they wouldn't even be there except for us. You take a look at Kuwait. I mean, we handed Kuwait back to the people that right now essentially own Kuwait, because it's really ownership more than anything else. We handed it back. They never paid us.
That kind of shoot-from-the-hip response seemed to play well with New Hampshire's independent-minded voters. Some got to meet Trump at this popular Portsmouth diner.
Because I just think he would be a good candidate. A very good candidate, and I like his views.
Others liked Trump's persona.
He did take a picture with me, though, and I asked him personally, so.
That's important in New Hampshire, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
One thing to keep in mind, New Hampshire is historically a swing state. For example, George W. Bush won it in 2000, then lost it in 2004. New Hampshire Republicans are optimistic they can take the state back in 2012. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney is the only Republican polling higher than Donald Trump in New Hampshire right now. And Trump is sounding like a candidate.
I would make this country rich again. I would make this country powerful again. And I would make this country respected again.
Democrats tell me they are confident they could beat Trump, but know his candidacy would mean an expensive and volatile race. In Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Mark Curtis, ABC 6 News.
Today, many state business leaders gathered to just say no on changes to the state sales tax. ABC 6 anchor Mark Curtis has that story now from Smith Hill.
Dozens of members of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce turned out in the State House Rotunda to protest the proposed changes in the state sales tax offered by Governor Chafee. Critics say expanding the sales tax to businesses that are currently exempt, such as hairdressers, theaters, and car repairs, will lead to job losses.
We're just crawling out of the greatest recession that we've had since the Great Depression, and now they want to send us back into it by taxing jobs.
And if you make me less competitive than I was already, there's a good chance jobs are going to be lost.
But the governor disagrees. He believes dropping the overall sales tax from 7% to 6% will attract more shoppers and businesses to Rhode Island.
So during the ups and downs of the economy, the revenues of the state go up and down. I thought it was very smart to change that for the future. We've seen it happen in the early 90s and here again now. When the economy collapses, state revenues collapse with it.
The governor says his plan will help close the state's $295 million budget deficit, but the General Assembly must approve it first. So this sets the stage for a fascinating political showdown. Governor Chafee, of course, was elected as an independent, and it will be interesting to see how many Democrats, let alone Republicans, line up behind his sales tax plan. At the State House in Providence, Mark Curtis, ABC 6 News.
Now, we thought we'd lighten it up a little bit and talk about politics. The Republican frontrunners for the 2012 presidential election are now more clearly defined. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, and Texas Governor Rick Perry are jockeying for position as we head into this election season. Joining us now to talk all things politics, our friend and political analyst, Mark Curtis with MarkCurtisMedia.com. How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Nice to have you here in the studio.
Absolutely, yeah, good to be here.
Now, you were in Iowa. You were in Iowa for the
No, I've been in New Hampshire. I flew over Iowa and looked down on the straw poll, and everybody meet on a stick at the state fair. But I didn't actually go to Iowa. But I've been with all of these candidates in New Hampshire now many times.
All right, how important is the straw poll? Michelle Bachmann won. So
Yes.
how important is this?
It's a big deal to her in the short run. It'll help her raise more money. It will help her get more volunteers. It'll keep her name on the front pages, but it's only a short-term thing. Only one person has ever won the Iowa straw poll, then won the nomination, and then won the presidency, and that's George W. Bush. So this is not a great predictor of anything. It just gives a short boost to her campaign.
All right, now Governor Pawlenty dropped out as a result of his showing in the straw poll.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have two Minnesotans in a race like this. And he wasn't getting the traction he needed. He probably wasn't getting many donations. And, you know, why run this 6-month marathon into the Iowa caucuses if you aren't gaining any traction or support? So he got smart, I think, and got out. The rumor is now he's going to run for the U.S. Senate for Minnesota. Maybe a better shot at that.
Now, Governor Rick Perry of Texas jumped into the race on Saturday, and he's got a very, very strong conservative base. He had that the big prayer meeting event in Texas to galvanize the Christian conservatives. Do you think that he can have a broad mainstream appeal enough to win a general election?
That remains to be seen. We know he can secure the right if he gets the nomination, but to get the center, to get all the independent voters is going to be a big issue, which is why I think he'll steer away from the religious issues eventually and talk about jobs and economic growth, because Texas is one of the places that really hasn't been hit hard by the recession. In fact, there are cities in Texas that are considered recession-proof. And, of course, you're the sitting governor. You're going to claim credit for that, whether you really get credit or not. Of course, on the other side, a lot of critics are saying, sure, they've created a lot of jobs in Texas, but they're low-paying jobs. But on balance, I think most people, if you ask, would you rather have a $10 an hour job or no job at all, they would take that $10 an hour job. So that's a plus for him, because jobs will be the #1 issue.
All right. Speaking of jobs being the #1 issue, the unemployment rate is stubborn and refuses to fall. I saw a poll yesterday, I believe it was. Gallup has the president's approval rating at the lowest of his presidency, somewhere between 39 and 40% approval rating. Can he be reelected with an approval rating like that at this point in his term, and with an unemployment rate as high as it is?
Yeah. Let's look at history. Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton looked just as vulnerable at this point in their first terms and were reelected. George H.W. Bush and Jimmy Carter were way ahead in the polls at this point in their term, and they both lost. So it's too early to tell. Mr. Obama is very vulnerable. He can be beaten. I give him a lot of credit for getting out there today. Where is he? He's campaigning in Minnesota. He's in Iowa. He's in the belly of the beast. He went right into the territory where the Republicans were, because he's going to fight it out tooth and nail for every vote. What I think the White House is hoping for is that there's something of a Republican bloodbath or a circular firing squad. Maybe Sarah Palin gets in, and all of a sudden you have 3 evangelical Christians in the race fighting it out. I think even Mitt Romney hopes for that, because as a moderate, gives him a shot at the nomination. But right now, the biggest hope for the White House is A, employment bounces back, and that's real dicey, but B, maybe the bigger factor is the Republicans have a knockdown, drag-out fight, beat each other up so badly, and spend up so much money in the primaries that they have a very weak nominee in November of 2012.
Mark Curtis, MarkCurtisMedia.com. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
Good to see you in the studio, Tom. Coming up, just in time for back to school, 5 ways to take the stress out of weeknight dinners.